Lydia Piper, and my husband and I own Lancaster Creek Spinnery. So we make the yarn that's in this booth. It comes from our sheep, and we do the whole processing at our farm.
Can you tell me about the equipment?
We have a bunch, so it's washed basically in wash sinks and spun out in an old Kenmore washing machine. From there it goes, we have a mini mill picker, and we have a carder from mini mills at Belfast up in Prince Edward Island, and so I use that for my rovings. We also have another carder, which is a Pietro Romello that came from Italy, and that's the one we use when we do our yarn runs. After it goes through a carder, it goes into a pin drafter, and from there we have 2 spinning frames that are Carolina specialties that we use for spinning the fiber.
What is the purpose of a picker?
It is not to pick out the vegetation, despite what everybody thinks. A picker is really an opener. It just takes the locks and opens them up and gets it ready so it can go into the carder and get brushed.
What is the purpose of the carder?
So the carder will then brush the fiber. It goes through a series of rollers. It brushes out any snarls and helps in the aligning of the fibers. And then from there, it will go into a pin drafter if it's going to go to be machine spun, and the pin drafter further aligns everything and gets it nice and uniform. So we'll put multiple carded ends into a pin drafter. So we'll start with 8 ends, so it would be like 8 bags of rovings going in, and then they get straightened and pulled out, drafted out, so thin them out so that they're about the same thickness as one of the ones that started. And it'll go through that process twice to get it properly lined so it can go into the spinner, and then it spins nice and straight and uniform without having slubs and bumps and breaks and swearing and other things that happen.
What kind of yarn do you get at the end?
It depends on what kind of yarn you're trying for. So we can spin from fingering to bulky weight yarns, so it's all figured out mathematically what kind of draft we need to get to those different yarns.
Are you spinning with a certain customer in mind? You said fingering, so like somebody knitting socks?
Or yes, socks, lace, things like that would be the fingering size. We have a variety of customers that have different needs, so we do it based on what they ask us to do with their fiber.
So you're taking the wool straight from the fleece?
Yes. Yes, we'll start with raw fleeces and go from there. We can add things in. Some of these yarns we have like sari silk that's an add-in. It's from processing of, it's leftovers from making the Indian saris, so it's the silk threads that were used in the weaving, and it's gone through a process of recarding it, so it's kind of regurgitated, and so there's little flecks of color and stuff. We add in regular silk, we can add in alpaca like to wool, or we add wool to alpaca. Different fibers have different properties, so depending on what you want your yarn to do, depends on what kind of fibers you put together.
Because alpaca has drape.
Alpaca is very drapey, and then through the processing, it's slippery, it doesn't hold together as well, but by adding like 20% merino to it, which is fine wool, that helps hold things together. It also gives some squish to the fiber, so that it gives more loft to it. It doesn't spin quite as dense. On the other end of things, superfine fibers can be hard, like wool can be hard to process as is, but adding some alpaca into it can make those fibers slip a little bit more, and then gives a nicer, smoother yarn.
Some of your yarn is naturally colored?
Yes, and some of it is combinations of natural colors with some dyed aspects to it, and some of it I've dyed all the different parts. The yarns here, I dye them before they get into the carder, so the blending is happening early on. We can do some blending on the pin drafter, which can give some striping effects or some sort of variegated effects, but when it goes through machine spun versus hand spun, it's very homogenized, so which is great because the first skein and the last skein look the same, so it all knits together great. But if you want to get that kind of variegation and stuff, it's very hard to work on that. You have to really try for it. Whereas if you're hand spinning, you can take one of these rovings and you can start spinning, and you can get the light and the dark and the different colors swirling in because it's not as processed.
Do you find that color is really important to your customers?
It gets people in. They'll tell me they like natural colors and they'll buy dyed. Or sometimes it's the dyed color that gets their eyes, and then they like, oh, I really like the natural. So, you have to have everything.
Okay.
And whatever you left at home is what they wanted.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us, or where you can be found?
We're on the northern neck of Virginia in Farnham.
Do you have a website?
No.
You don't have a website. So people need to come to a fiber festival to find you.
Yes, that would be the best thing to find me. I actually have a list over there of fiber festivals I'll be at. Next weekend I'm going to be in Bedford for a fiber festival there. I got several through the fall.
And you do the Fall Fiber Festival of Virginia?
Yes, I do that one. Been doing that one for quite a while. It's a good one.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.